Hello, my wonderful and beautiful friends. Guys, welcome back to r/IDontWorkHereLady, where Karens mistake regular customers as employees, and the stories are freaking mind-boggling. In today's episode, a pregnant woman craving chips gets yelled at by a Karen, who mistakes her for a gas station employee. But wait, it gets even crazier when our awesome Uber driver steps in to save the day. Guys, these stories are wild, so I hope you don't shake your heads too hard. Subscribe if you're not subscribed, and as always, you can send or link your posts to this email right here. Let's dive in. Story 1. Yelled at for wanting chips. Our first story comes from a pregnant woman who just wanted some chips. This happened just an hour ago, and I'm still in shock that it actually occurred. I've been mistaken for an employee many times in my life, but this one ranks pretty high on my WTF list. I decided to go to the gas station near my house because I had a pregnancy craving for chips. The ride was uneventful, and I had a particularly nice Uber driver who said to take my time and that she'd take me home free of charge. The adventure started off nice. I went inside the gas station and stood in front of the chips, trying to decide how many bags I could buy without my husband getting miffed at me for spending too much money. I probably looked like I was carrying twins because my baby is already well above average size. After a minute or two, I heard someone clearing their throat. I figured I was in the way, so I said, "Excuse me," and stepped back to let a 40-something-year-old woman pass, but she didn't walk by. Instead, she asked where I was going. I replied that I was moving out of her way. She then told me she needed help and couldn't believe I was walking away. She wanted to know where the spicy lime lays were. I told her I didn't work there, but she insisted I was an employee. Instead of apologizing, she said, "Just because you're pregnant doesn't mean you can't help a customer." I walked back, grabbed a few bags of chips, and moved to the next aisle, ignoring her. After paying for my chips, I headed outside, only to find her following me. She blocked my car door and told me I couldn't just walk away from a customer. Luckily, my awesome Uber driver popped out and told her to back off before she slapped her so hard she wouldn't remember how to talk. The woman finally got into her car and left. My Uber driver and I had a good laugh on the way home. I even managed to sneakily tip her in the app after she drove off so she couldn't argue. Now, I'm still in disbelief that this happened at a small gas station, not even the size of a 7-Eleven. What made her think I was an employee? And why continue arguing after being told otherwise? At least I got my chips. Story 2. Mistaken identity at the Japanese store. Yesterday was my birthday, and a good friend and I decided to have a fun shopping day at our local mall. Our mall often changes stores, and one new store that had just opened was a Japanese product store. It had everything from anime and games to cute little items. I loved it all, and my friend had a hard time getting me out of the store. I sometimes like to rearrange items on shelves, and as I was tidying up some plushies, a man came up to me holding a pink plushie. He asked if it had a price on it. I thought he might have mistaken me for an employee, but I replied that we were wondering the same thing about the plushies on the other side. Realizing his mistake, he apologized, and we both chuckled awkwardly. My friend and I found it funny, not to be rude, but because we've had those moments too. I love this store, so I took it as a compliment. My friend agreed and said she would also happily take it as a compliment if she were mistaken for an employee at her favorite store. And that's what happened yesterday. I hope you enjoyed these stories and have a good, safe weekend. Story 3. Just delivering food. My dad just retired, and we had his retirement party last night. A lot of his former and current employees, as well as family, were there. A few people got up and gave speeches, and though I never worked for him, I told this story from about 12 years ago. A few people later told me I should share it here, so here it goes. About 12 years ago, when I was in high school, I had the day off. So my dad invited me to go out to lunch with him the next day. Mom wouldn't be able to get off, so it was just going to be a daddy-daughter lunch date. The day of, just when I was going to get into the shower and get ready for the day, my dad calls and says something big has come up at work and we're going to have to postpone our lunch. But because this was a surprise event for him, he didn't bring anything to eat, so he asked me to stop by a Subway and grab him a sandwich and some chips and bring it to him at work. I was bummed, but said, okay. Instead of the nice sweater or skirt combo I had planned on wearing, I put on a pair of old ripped jeans and a black t-shirt with a giant Nike logo across the front, as well as putting my hair into a messy ponytail under a black and red baseball cap. I picked up his food and drove off to his work. He owned and operated a hardware garden store, I got there, went to his office, and saw him behind the glass on the phone, with lots of papers around him, and he looked frantic on his call and shuffling through the papers. I knocked on the glass, held up the bag with his food, and when he saw me, he gave me a thumbs up and then jerked his thumb over his shoulder towards the employee break room, so I went there to put his food in the fridge. When I got there were 2 warehouse employees there. I'll call them Tom and Dan. And they told me that their biggest supplier had suddenly and unexpectedly gone out of business that day. And Dad was trying to see if he could snag any leftover inventory they might still have, as well as looking for a new supplier. We also made some idle chit-chat before I put Dad's lunch in the fridge and walked out the door. This is when the main villain of the story stepped in. I'll call her Karen, as that seems to be the norm around here. I got maybe 2 steps out the door when she grabbed my attention and asked where the doohickey was. At the time, I had no idea what a doohickey was, so I politely said, "I'm sorry, I don't work here. I'm just delivering food." She practically screamed, "Why won't you help me?" Then noticed the sign over the door that said, "Employees only," and said, "What were you doing in there if you don't work here?" Thinking she caught me or something. I said, "This is where I was told to bring the food, but I really don't work here, and I don't even know what a doohickey is." She then started berating me for not knowing what a doohickey was when I thought of Tom and Dan behind the door, and surely one of them would know what a doohickey was and where to find it. But when I turned to go in and get one of them, she loudly shrieked, "Why won't you help me? Don't bother your coworkers when you're right here." I don't know if it was because he was done on the phone or just was alerted by Karen's loud shrieking, but my dad came out of his office and asked what was going on. Karen quickly spoke up and said, "I'm trying to find a doohickey and she won't help me." Dad looked at her and said, "I'm sorry, but she's just delivering lunch. She probably doesn't even know what a doohickey is." I then told my dad that I tried to get Tom or Dan to come out and help her, as I had no idea what a doohickey was. Karen's response was to tell Dad, "You should train the workers better." Dad's response was to say, "Again, she doesn't work here, and she claims she tried to get you help. Did she or did she not?" Karen then said, "Why is everyone trying to cover for her? As far as I know, she had only talked to me and Dad, so I don't know who everyone was." Dad then told her, "Doohickeys are on aisle 3, or you can maybe find one at Home Depot." He later told me that's the first time he ever suggested to a customer that they can go elsewhere even if he had the item in stock, or could get it there in a reasonable amount of time. He then told me what a doohickey was. Karen then stormed off to aisle 3, and later that evening, Dad told me she had bought a doohickey. Years later, when I was married and my husband and I got a house, Dad gave us a doohickey as a housewarming gift. I started laughing hysterically when I unwrapped it and saw what it was. It was a light sensor for outdoor lights, so they automatically come on when it's dark enough. My husband thought there was something wrong with me because I was laughing like crazy and could barely get out. "Did you find it on aisle 3, or did you have to go to Home Depot?" So, Dad is officially retired now, my older brother is taking over, and I know where to get a doohickey should I ever need one. And that, my friends, brings us to the end of another episode of r/IDontWorkHereLady. If you enjoyed today's stories, hit that thumbs up and consider subscribing so you don't miss any crazy stories. If you missed yesterday's episode, check it out. It's an r/EntitledPeople episode where a psycho Karen confiscates OP's son because he looks nothing like him. It's a wild story, so don't miss it. See you in the next one. Bye.